Everyone, welcome back to another episode of Attack on Productions Dragon Ball. Today I'm joined by Jake and Jimmy.
What's going on, y'all?
And it's backwards. It's weird not having Bancroft do it.
I'm not Bancroft who messes up my outro. I'm gonna mess up his intro. So that's some shade for you. But today we're looking at the top 10 5-drop cards of the Dragon Ball Super card game. But before we get into that, make sure you do all the fun YouTube-y stuff, like, subscribe, comment, let us know if there's any content you'd like to see us do for you. So a couple rules behind this. We're not talking about any counters. We're not talking about any super combos, and we're not really including any card that appears on the banned or limited list. Well, but after all of that, I'm going to go on ahead and hand it over to Jake for our number 10.
And in our number 10 slot, we've got Android 21, a Bad Omen. This card came out in the Android Duality Expert deck, back around set 8, I think it was. And this card was really fun. It allowed you to place a card in your energy that would basically allow you with an alternative kill condition later in the game. And as the Android 21 strategy just gets more and more support over the years, this card just gets better and better. And the Activate main isn't really tied to androids in any way, so you can utilize this card in just about any blue-green strategy. I think it's even in modern Android 16 decks, if I'm not mistaken.
You
Absolutely.
are correct.
Yeah, this was a card that I was really turned off on when it first came out, and then the longer the card has been out, the more on this card I've been, and the more respect I've had to give it. But we've got Ultimate Fusion Gogeta, introduced in the Resurrected Fusion Starter Deck 6. It actually took a little bit of time for this card to pick up a little bit of traction. Really, the first time that we saw it was in as a tech choice for Shin Jita, if I believe. And then the card really never picked up any other steam until we started getting more prolific blue ramp strategies that didn't lock the archetype to the ramp itself, like Goku Black and some Moss strategies. But once we got stuff like SS4 Vegeta, and we got stuff like Vegito and Veku Ramp, this card started to come into its own, where it wouldn't get played by its Union Fusion skill. It would instead get cast for 5, which would let you draw a card, and then bottom deck 2 of your opponent's cards, which was a really strong momentum change and tempo swap, essentially. 5 energy to put a 25,000 double strike that draws you 2, bottom decks 2. It's a massive plus and advantage for tapping 5 energy.
And even in modern day, it's you're hard pressed to find a blue battle card in this energy cost range that does this much for you.
Yeah, and this really kind of it almost breaks the rule of wanting to pay more or wanting to pay the full 5 energy. Usually when we're looking at these higher cost cards, they're paid for a reduced energy cost. So for this guy to just be paid, when he can be played at a 4 energy, but to be played at a 5 like this, just speaks to how strong the card is.
And in number 8, we got Mass Saiyan, the Mysterious Warrior. This was in the first round of expansion packs, which this one included the deck box and had the Time Patrol Trunks and the Haruharus. I believe this had the Haruharus. I could be incorrect.
I think it did.
Yeah, but this card was incredibly sought after just because of how fantastic its effect were, and there was nothing that was equivocal. You couldn't find, a cheaper set alternative to this card at the time. And it's an overwhelm 5, it's a double striker, and it's going to wipe cards that add up to the energy cost of 5. It does have the limit that you cannot target cards with blocker, which blocker was a little bit more prevalent back in the day when this card was seeing a lot of play. But still, we have cards like Secret ID, Mass Saiyan that will, wipe this card, walk it. But for the history that this card's had and how prevalent it was at the time, we had to include it on the list. Especially since it drove the price of that expansion box astronomically. Mainly just because people are after this card just to get their foils in it, because I believe it come with 2 copies, 1 foil and 1 non-foil, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right. I also think the 4-drop Trunks was in that as well. So both of these cards really shot that product up a lot.
Yeah, I believe the Time Patrol Trunks was a 3-drop. I believe the 4-drop Trunks came in a later set.
Oh, you're right.
Next up on the list, this isn't really something we typically do, but just the prevalence of this card in the current meta just kind of forced our hand, and that's Truelist All Too Easy. It's a double striker. When it's played, you can choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode, KO it, and then choose another effect, which is really unique. You can draw a card, or choose another one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode and KO it. And if your leader is a mono yellow Saiyan and you have 3 or more energy, you can actually play this from your hand for just 2 energy off the activate main. Usually we don't include cards that have just come out in our top 10 of all time lists, but this Turles has just been so good ever since it came out in Saiyan Showdown that we felt like we just had to include it, and it might even be better than some of the cards to come on the list. But we thought the number 7 slot was a really good place for it to show that it's an up and comer in the game.
The only limiting factor behind this card is the mono yellow Saiyan leader, which there are so many fantastic mono yellow Saiyans, even in the history of this meta. Mono yellow Saiyans have always been meta prevalent, and it doesn't look like that's stopping anytime soon. And that's still just such a small limitation to the amount of value that you're getting off of this card. You were certainly getting 5 energy worth of value off this card for the 2 energy off the activate main.
Moving forward at our number 5 spot, we've got Full Power Frieza 100% Overdrive, introduced in Series 9 Universal Onslaught. This massive big boy of a 5-drop, 30k triple strike. When it attacks, you choose all of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier. They get minus 30,000 for the power, or 30,000 power for the turn. And then the second auto is when the power of one of your opponent's battle cards is decreased, your opponent places 2 cards from the top of their deck into the drop area. I remember when this card was introduced, everyone was like, oh my gosh, this is the most broken card they have ever printed. And thankfully that wasn't the case. Because there's a couple ways to cheat this guy out, but they're not the most consistent, protected strategies that Bandai has ever released for this game. So, but being able to put this guy out for 5, or more commonly, put out with the 4-drop Rebirth of Justice extra card. So for 4 energy, you're throwing this guy onto the field, practically negging the entire field out, and then your opponent's going to mill a bunch of cards off the top of their deck, which might mill out some of their win conditions or their super combos or other cards that they might need to otherwise survive/win the game.
And then of course you can't forget the Android 21 and 18 mill decks that would just fill your board with clone tokens and then kill you by attacking with this guy just once.
Yeah absolutely.
And breaking in to our top 5 of our top 5-drop list, we have SSB Gogeta Resonant Explosion, another expansion card. This was the red, green, and blue, yellow expansions that introduced Arrival and Alliance. And this is the card that has went the distance, in my opinion. A lot of the other ones have kind of fallen off to better options that have come out, but nothing's really replaced this guy. There's probably stronger Arrivals, but this guy is just so evergreen that you're not going to get away from him. He's a double strike, arrives for 1 red energy, and then auto, you blow up something 4 or less on play. So he's fantastic pressure, being a 20k double striker for 1 energy, and he's also great defense, where you could, clear up some extra things on the field. If your opponent decides to combo on something with a 4 or less, you could just put this guy and make everything they've done null and void. He's seen play in launch. Any red-green strategy is going to be running this guy. There's a lot of tricolor decks. Beerus is getting popular right now. They're running red-green. They're going to be throwing this guy out there. Like, just so much value for 1 energy.
Then I guess it's up to me to talk about number 4, which is Fuse Zamasu Deity's Wrath. This is probably one of my personal favorite cards on the list, so it's cool that I get to talk about it. It's indestructible, which is a keyword you don't really get to see a lot in this game. And if you have 3 or more energy, you can pay 1 on the activate main to choose green cards in your battle area with 5k power or more, and they have to add up to an energy cost of 5, and place them in your drop area to just play him. And then when he attacks, he's going to rip a card out of your opponent's hand. And unless you're playing against red, that's pretty much just going to stick, because indestructible, you know, it's going to be really difficult to remove this guy.
This is the earliest example of successor that we've seen in the game, where specifically the activate main, which was a little bit harder around the time of Draft Box 4 to get a 5 cost on the field that you are willing to place in the drop area to play this guy. But now you have, stuff like Charismatic Villain, which is the just value town when compared with this paired with this guy. Android 16 has a ton of 5 drops that it plays for cheaply that are great targets for this guy. And to second on that indestructible, the indestructible is what makes this card insane. It would be a fantastic card and would probably still make this list if it was just a activate main for 1 energy that you could put out like this. But the indestructible makes this card a top 5 worthy in the game.
It was really, to me, it was set 10 when this card came into its own. You mentioned Charismatic Villain Frieza. And really, with the advent of that card, I mean, you have a 10,000 battle power card that may not have any use aside being a 5k combo or something. Doesn't threaten the leader without costing you some type of hand advantage. So just having something to be able to, step off of into this guy, it just bred new life into this card. And then moving into our number, what do we got? We're at number 3 now? Gosh.
Oh, yeah.
We're ripping right through these. We're there. Yeah, wow. Okay, so coming out from the Vicious Rejuvenation, we've got the 5-drop Frieza Divine Transformation. This is actually my favorite card on the list, so I'm actually really excited that I get to talk about this card. 25,000 body on a 5-cost specified 5 yellow. So there's no way that I know of to cheat this guy out, but trust me, it is absolutely worth it. Keyword skills on the card: deflect, double strike, blocker. The card can't be removed from battle area by skills, so it basically has indestructible without the battle protection, so it can still die to battle but can't be removed by any type of skill. And then auto, if your leader card is yellow, when this card is played, choose all of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode, KO them, and flip 1 face-up card in your life face down. At the end of the turn, switch this card to active mode. So usually we're just using this to blow up the rest mode cards and then restand this card at the end of the turn. We usually don't care about the flip 1 face up and our life face down. And then auto once per turn, when your opponent activates a counterattack skill, choose up to 2 of their cards, switch into rest mode, and they can't be switched back to active mode until the end of your opponent's next turn. So we're giving ourselves, for 5 energy, we're giving ourselves a double strike 25,000 incredibly relevant body that is going to tap down if our opponent decides to react to this large swing. Plus it gives us some defense on the following turn if we're not able to close out the game. This card has seen a ton of play, especially with the resurgence of yellow as kind of the top color of the last, 2 sets or so, since they've really hampered down on aggro. But we're seeing a lot of yellow decks that are taking this in at like a 1 or 2 of to just close out games, because this is really like 8 or 9 energy worth of effects for just tapping 5.
Number 2, we got Demon God Demigra True Power Unleashed. This is one of my favorite cards, so it's really cool that I get to talk about it just to keep this train going here. And that is not a lie. This card is insane.
That's funny how that worked out. Like, we didn't plan that going into this.
It wasn't planned at all.
So this card released in Draft Box 6 Giant Force. It is yet another black card. topping one of our lists. It's a Overwhelm 5 for 2, and it's also a Dark Overwhelm 5 for 2. So depending on your list, you could either keep this card on the field, or you can just throw it out there to get its insane effects. So when the card is played, you get to draw a card, replaces himself. You get to warp one of your opponent's battle cards, and when he swings, every single time he swings, your opponent has to warp one card out of their hand. This card is like the fusion dance of all the best Overwhelm cards in the game's history. This card combines everything that you want in an Overwhelm, whether you're playing it as one of your main pieces of the deck with having it stick around with Dark Overwhelm, or just throwing it in as a tech option to play it off of its regular Overwhelm. This card just has everything. While it does cost 2 energy and does get outshined by stuff like Fighting Against Fates, for game ending in non-mono black decks, this card is still a contender. Every time you build a deck, you should think about trying to fit in a Demon God Demigra.
And since we're in this like feel-good space of just talking about cards we like, I think it's time to go into the honorable mentions. I'm gonna mention Hatchiak, Hatred Everlasting. This is the Hatchiak that you can just pitch from your hand to mill cards from the top of your deck. I love playing this card in regular old Hatchiak. I like it in Vejex. It's got its uses in the new Bardock leader, I would argue. Just to like rip through your deck even quicker and look for those kill pieces. It's really just a nice card to have, and if you run out of other battle cards to play, you can always reload cards to your deck from your drop area and play it to the field.
I guess the one that I kind of wanted to bring up was the SS Kaba Proud Zenith. This guy, another one that came out of Sand Showdown. I think there's going to be a lot of use for this card moving forward. You know, having a 19,000 body that is a dual attack blocker, that if you play it during your turn, you get to draw 2 cards. If you play it during your opponent's turn, you get to bottom deck one of their cards, then restand one of your energy. So at the end of using this card, you're effectively only playing this on your opponent's turn for 2 unspecified color energy. Because it does have that activate main for 3, where you get to play it if you have 3 or more blue and or yellow cards in battle or combo area. And I think that this card is going to be really relevant because it's not leader locked, it's super generic, it's really disruptive in a lot of different situations, and I think we're going to see a lot from it.
And for mine, I chose Mira Self-Reformation. This card, while it is kind of locked to either your Toa or your Android leader, it still has one of the most insane plays you can make in the game by boarding the Mirror Crater Absorb for its Union Fusion. It's seen a lot of play in the Toa formats and did a lot of damage there. Then now it's kind of seeing kind of a resurgence within Finn, whether you're playing the Finn archetype, which is not all that fantastic, or kind of going into a running better packages like the Mirror Self-Reformation package. It's a double strike. You get to play it for 4 if you have a big warp, which if you're playing a Mirror deck, you're probably going to have a big warp. It does have deflect hidden in all that text. That is something to remember. So he's coming out pretty much no matter what, and you're definitely going to be able to board your Mirror and get its effect. There's not many better options other than Vow to the Creator to put a Crater Absorbed on field. But even that has its downsides versus Self-Reformation.
And I think that brings us to our penultimate number 1 5-drop spot. Again, coming out of Universal Onslaught, we've got Cooler Tyrannical Assault. Pretty much if there's a red-blue deck, this guy's included. Being able to come out for 1 energy, negs 2 battle cards on the field, is a mill, and then is a double strike 20,000 body on top of that. Is he 20 or 25?
He's 20.
Just 20.
Yeah, just a 20,000 body. Like, that is amazing. And, I mean, we've seen this guy used in Invoker. We've seen it in Cooler. Shout out to Austin. We've seen it used in Launch. We've seen it used in... Oh, God, help me out. What else?
Even those, like, Pan Frieza spaceship lists that have been floating around recently have played this guy. Like, he's just...
Yeah.
Like, any red-blue battle card, or even non-battle card based strategy, he's just there.
He's so easy to slot into a deck as well. There's so many decks that are playing a completely different type of strategy, but still find room to throw in Tyrannical Assaults. Even decks that you wouldn't label as a red-blue deck are teching them in with other blue battle cards to combo them out.
Yeah.
Like, this guy is just... text on card wise, this guy is one of the most insane for the energy cost that is invested within him.
And just staying power alone, like, this guy was definitely in the top 2 immediately when we sat down to make this list.
Well, and the fact that his negging 10k, you choose 2 cards, but it also ignores barrier, so it punishes a lot of things that are protected otherwise that typically would sit around and influence the game. So I'm thinking about like the draw related cards, or the
Bobbity for AOD.
the Bobbity for AOD, right? Like, this card completely punishes that strategy, and a lot of times decks don't have solutions for dealing with that Bobbity particularly. And this, for 1 energy, lets you clean up a Bobbity and protect yourself from a swing that's coming through. And that's it, guys. That's our top 10 5-drop cards in the Dragon Ball Super trading card game. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. These lists are a lot of fun for us to kind of talk about and move through. We still haven't quite got the format on how we want to do them, but if there's anything that you'd like to hear from us, if you'd like to hear us more organically speak about them, even if it results in a longer video style, let us know in the comments below. If you like this kind of, rigid, factual, step-by-step format, cool. We're perfectly happy to keep it going at that rate. But either way, let us know what you think. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it insightful. As always, read your cards, know your plays, let us make the mistakes so that you don't have to, and as always, fluff out.